So let's get straight on and talk first and hear from Schaer, the CEO, Eric Schaer. This is obviously a company which operates in Burma, in Myanmar, obviously an area in the news. I'm sure he'll talk about that and many other things. So let's give the floor to Eric.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate the opportunity to come here and speak and give some additional information on the company, and then also look to answer some of your questions. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to just cover a few things here. One is, I do want to go into the presentation, but just before that, I want to just touch on the fact that we did issue a trading update today that I know we'll get some questions on and such, and I'm happy to answer whatever I can. So we will go ahead and be addressing that in the Q&A, so I'll be happy to go ahead and go through that. So I don't want anybody to think that we're not going to go ahead and answer any questions and such, more than happy to. But what I want to do first is just go through the presentation that the folks here have been kind enough to go ahead and set up and arrange for us, and give you a little bit of background on this. I'm also happy to answer some questions on Myanmar. I've been working in Myanmar for a number of years. So we have a significant amount of information, not just on this, but also on the country and other things that we're happy to communicate to everyone here today. But starting with the company here, let me go ahead and talk about who we are and Schaer. So Schaer, as we talk about, is we're a consumer technology company. What we do primarily is we make apps in Myanmar. That's the visible part of what we do. If we look at Myanmar itself, Myanmar, as we all know, was under sanctions for many, many years. And the sanctions, the country opened up, and it created one of a market that had, of over 50 million people that had been cut off from the world, for just economically cut off and legally cut off for so many years. So what they created was an opportunity where you had a very large number of people, that there was a technology generation leap. You were working in a country that had less than 2.5 million phones at the time, out of a population of over 50 million people. SIM cards cost back then hundreds of dollars. So when we first looked at this, when it started opening up, what we looked at was some of the points here. If we look at this here, we can see that there's a youthful population. It doesn't specific here, but actually 47% of the country is 24 years and younger. So there's a huge youth population in Myanmar. Right now, mobile phones are so prevalent. When we first started going in there, mobile phones were a rarity, but everyone elsewhere in the world, if you looked at, for example, Vietnam, 140% penetration. In Myanmar, obviously a small fraction of that. Currently, we're approaching a significantly higher number. It's not at 100% yet, but it is getting close to that. So the smartphone has become the access, the choice method of access for the internet, for the youth and for the citizens of Myanmar, which makes it something that is an opportunity in the country that just didn't exist anywhere else. And what I mean by that is you had people moving from, again, not having anything to going ahead and being able to take advantage of the latest and greatest technology. Because remember, at the same time, there were no legacy systems. So there were no things that people had to be backward compatible with. They couldn't go from, they never went to like the old Nokia flip phone or the Nokia 900 that I had. They went straight to the latest and greatest smartphone. And the other thing that occurred is with China being there was so much trade with China, they pushed down the price of the smartphones. So you can buy a very capable smartphone in Myanmar for about $35, $40 that does pretty much everything that a new Samsung might do. It might not do it as fast, it may not do it as flashy, but for the basic things it can do. But for part of this with the country at the time, only 5% of the population spoke English. And as a result, there was not a way to communicate. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to bring things to the people that would help the people and that we could bring to them at no charge, and then look at how we could go ahead and monetize at a later time. So the first thing that we looked at was, how do we gain users in the country? So if you have a country where 95% of the people speak a language that essentially no one else does, and it doesn't exist. It wasn't one of those things, why you do a pull-down menu when you sign up for, you install a new software? The Myanmar language was not one of those. It wasn't there. So you could not load something on your computer and select the Myanmar language. So what we decided to start with was a chat app. Let's go ahead and look and let the people chat, talk to each other, work on this platform of the mobile phones that were going out so quickly and start getting communication going. Give them the opportunity to speak to each other, and just like really everyone was doing in the West at the time with Viber, with WeChat in China, with WhatsApp. And that's what led to so many users and so many users downloading the software, where we have so many, millions of downloads of our software at this point. Now, we had to go ahead and do this we had to look at other aspects, because sometimes people, for example, they look at the MyChat app on, if we look at Google Play, I think right now it shows 500,000 to 1 million downloads. Now, the thing is when you're working in some of these countries at the time, for example, the Chinese-made phones, they were not allowed. Huawei phones, for example, couldn't at the time. They couldn't access the Google App Store. So how did they get that software? They would go to other sites that here in the West we don't use really at all, because it's so transparent and it's so easy to use the Google Play Store and update everything. But over there were third-party sites where you would download the APK file, essentially the program file that would then install it. So a lot of these downloads we would have to put on these other sites, and the downloads would come from there. Or, for example, if I had it and you had it, we could swap, and I could transfer the file directly to you, which was also a way that the Myanmar people did it, because it reduced the cost significantly. They didn't have to use their data plans. So it allowed us to really build a very, very good foundation, which, originally what we want to do with that, and we still want to do, is you monetize that foundation through advertisements and such. When you have foreign firms such as Coca-Cola coming in, they want to go ahead and advertise, and they're looking for ways to get that, good information out to the people, and they want to do it in a targeted fashion. So if we look here, some of this here, right now, mobile phone penetration, it says here, is about 93%. 80% of the phones are smartphones there, which is what is necessary to run our apps. So that gives us a huge opportunity, a huge foundation, technical foundation in Myanmar. So here on this slide, it talks about the different market potential that you have there. Now, the nice thing, when you're working in a country that was cut off from the world, there's market potential everywhere, because it's a blank slate. It's a clean canvas, so to speak. You have to focus and pick the things that you feel will be the most successful, for the company. Now, as you do that, of course, some things don't work. Some you try, they don't work. You move on to the next one, and you go ahead and find out what's best for the people, as far as what's most accepting, what they enjoy, and what is popular. Again, 47% of the people are essentially young people. And young people in Myanmar, they like the same things that young people like in other countries. They love the games. They want the games. They like to play the games. Everybody's, playing on the computer. Everybody's, playing on their smartphone, working on these different things. So what we said is, let's go ahead and put together with MySquare a platform of apps that we can leverage off each other, and that will come together and integrate into a nice, smooth platform. So if we look here, we can see some of the pieces that we've put in place. MyChat, we have MyGame, if we look over here, we talk about the online advertising. Mingla Barmorni is a news aggregator. We're the #1 news aggregator in Myanmar right now. So this is a local language one. You'll find with a lot of our apps, and it's things that on our sites, if you go to them, they're not in English. They're all in the local language. Often people ask us, why don't you do an English version of it? And the answer is, look, that's not our target audience. There's plenty of things. There's plenty of games for you and your kids to play out here already. You're not our target audience, essentially. Our target audience for these are the Myanmar people who do not speak English. So we aggregate the news in the local language. It gives us a path. It draws people to that. We can advertise our games. We can encourage downloads on those pieces. Now, of course, as a company, we want to look at how we monetize these things. Because in the end, look, you're all investors, or you wouldn't be here. You're all investing or evaluating investing into MySquare because you want to make money. I mean, you want to invest, you want the company to go ahead and have the share price go up, and you want to go ahead and turn a profit. From our standpoint, how we do that, there's a couple ways. One is you need to have users. Originally this was essentially like a land grab. If you look at some of the companies, so many of the companies out there in the technology world, they're focused on users, and users growth. We've been fortunate in that we've had very, very successful user growth in Myanmar. At the same time, user growth is great, but you need to move it to monetization. It has to reach a point where you can move that towards monetization so the company can generate revenue so that we can self-fund ourselves through that revenue instead of having to look to investors to provide the funding for that revenue. Now, from that aspect, we have started doing that through our game, our mobile gaming. And I have to be careful not to say gaming because that tends to mean gambling over here in the UK. So when we talk about gaming, sometimes we mean mobile gaming is what we're referring to. So our monetization strategy was a couple of areas here. One is there's premium content. So for example, on the new areas that we do, for example, on the dating aspects of the MyChat app, there's a premium content that people can pay for on that. There's advertising. Advertising, for example, is the Coca-Cola that wants to go ahead and run a targeted ad on Mingalabar Morning for advertising a product or a new product. And some of these products you have to remember that are common to us here in the West, they are not necessarily common in Myanmar. And the methods for how we go about that monetization is very different. So remember also, here, if you're in Google Play, you want to go ahead and top up, you want to do something, you've got a credit card link, you just push the button. It's very easy. Remember, when there were sanctions, there were no credit cards in Myanmar, other than the locally produced one by the one government-owned entity. But external credit cards, there were not any. They could not get things from Google Play. They could not go ahead and pay us through Google Play because no one had credit cards. So we had to devise a different methodology down there. Now that led us to doing things such as, for example, top-up cards. Top-up cards, similar to here, you can top up your prepaid phone. You would top up to an account, and then we could go ahead and debit that account for premium content on the games. For example, someone wants to level up. Someone wants to move to another level, they need more gems, they need more of this, they could buy this piece. Those are the things that generate revenue. Now, part of this, though, is you want to also facilitate it and make it more, let them do it in the most easy fashion. The most easy fashion is if you have your telephone and you already have a balance with the carrier, the easiest thing for this consumer is just to push a button there and have it debit their top-up balance. You know, why top up your phone and also top up Schaer? It's two things you have to do. That's where we focused on, and as we've mentioned, we focused on, for example, signing up Telenor, which allows us, if someone has a Telenor phone, they can debit their top-up balance at Telenor to purchase items on Schaer. We recently did the same with Ooredoo. There are 2 additional carriers in Myanmar, and of course we are pursuing. Obviously we would love to have all of those signed up also, because it facilitates and makes the gaming, the mobile gaming, the easiest way to move that forward. So we are actively pursuing those avenues of monetization also. Switch to the next slide here. Payments, if we look at here, payments is key to go ahead and be able to lower the costs for us as a company. By any of the lower the cost that we have to go ahead and utilize, the more easy it is for someone to go ahead and top up or buy our games is a better way to do it. Also, when we have a large user base, people want access to that user base. They want to be able to access that. That's why we did an agreement with MyPay. We received a payment from the company MyPay, who's on the panel tonight here also, which allowed them access to utilize those users for their payment system or what they develop that way. So what part of our strategy also is to develop that user base and then be able to monetize it in various ways, and which payments is one of them. Okay, if we look at where we are right now as far as the achievements, we are #1 in gaming. And look, games change up and down, depending on the day. So there may be a popular, it's kind of like films. And that's one of the things, if you look at the films will be, this film is #1 here this week for so many weeks, then it switches to #2. Some it goes back up. But in aggregate, if you look at how many games we have out there, we are the #1 Myanmar gaming company in Myanmar as far as our positions in the Google Play down there. Also, we're the #1 news aggregator down there, and we're the #1 in social media. When we say #1 in social media, we mean the local companies. Facebook is now up there, of course, and yes, they have more users than we do, but we also went ahead and worked with Facebook. See, part of these things is you work with some of these groups to allow logins via this or logins via that, to make it a smooth offer for the users. What we want to do is be able to complement. You don't try and win in every single category. What you want to do is you want to pick a few focused pieces that are the key pieces for our company that we will be successful in, and we want to dominate in that area. And that is what we are actively working to go ahead and do. Now, what I'd like to do is just play the clip to give you guys a feel for some of the games that we have going on. Now guys, some of these games may not appeal to you. It may be a different age bracket, but I can tell you for sure, many of these games, there's people who love one, they may not like another, but there are so many that the youth enjoy. And I think that's one of the biggest things that we have here is we've got, you know, and I would welcome any of you, if you're ever in that part of the world, you know, stop by our office in Vietnam where we develop the games and where we go ahead and reskin. You're more than welcome to come through, meet the team. We've got, you know, we've got dozens and dozens of young people there. We've got over 100 people working there that are just, you know, they're youthful, they're full of energy, and they love what they're doing. And that's the nice environment, because you see that, and they're actually doing something that's so helpful, because the games here, people can download for free in Myanmar. You know, they don't have to, it's a freemium model. They can download the games, they can play them. Yes, we want to monetize it, but at the same time we recognize it's a challenging economic situation for many people, and we provide these for free. You know, they can play that, they can enjoy them. And then I also want to show the MyChat app, which has been the core program that builds the foundation of this. And again, MyChat, all of these things, most of these for the most part, you can download here and check them out yourselves and play with them. You reach a certain point where they just, you know, where it does switch to the Myanmar language, and then it gets a little challenging. It's interesting, you know, my brother's, you know, I think 14-year-old daughter, he couldn't get past the Myanmar point. He gave it to her. She was playing the game about 60 seconds later, because it's just, it flows, you know, even without understanding the language. The youth love and thoroughly enjoy the games. Okay, so let's look here. We're going to, what I want to do here is on the mobile money, on the mobile payments, this is something that eventually we want to go ahead from a MySquare standpoint. We've discussed, you know, previously. Mobile payments are something that are necessary. There's something that, as countries evolve, there's always transactions for mobile payments, and we want to be looking to be able to take advantage of that so that people can buy things on our platform at MySquare. Here's some of our offices here. As I said, you know, if you're ever in Myanmar, if you're ever in Singapore, surprisingly, a lot of UK citizens, amazing how many people have visited Myanmar. You know, we talked to some was 20 years ago, some was 5 years ago. I see Barry, who's been there multiple times to Myanmar. It's a wonderful country. It's a beautiful spot. There was a recent article in the Telegraph, I think, talking about how so much of the country is based on hospitality now. It's a great source of income for people, you know, locally. So anything on that, it's a great opportunity. You're more than welcome to stop by and see things for yourself at our location.